I am not a career politician. Politics is my second busy profession. In that role, I always, as my parents did, I always volunteered in my community. I always did other things, raising my family, and by example to our children, both Brent and I showed that we cared, I believe, for our community, and that we had something to offer in terms of how we lived our lives. Along the way, I got involved in a community dispute, which is very, very relevant to one of our biggest issues in BC today, and that is DRIPA and Indigenous governance and Indigenous title. When I was 34, I was suddenly widowed. I had a 6 and 7.5-year-old, and I had to pull my life together. My parents came to help me, as I said, as one of the younger kids, so my parents were already older, and they came and lived with me for 2 years to help me get back on my feet. We lost 3/4 of our family income when my husband suddenly died. So it was a time of struggle, and we bought a home on leasehold property, a leasehold home on Musqueam land in South Vancouver, because I could get it for less than a freehold piece of property. I could get it big enough for 3 generations, and this had been a peaceful community for 24 years. A year after we moved in, and I should say when we bought the house, the realtor, one of the selling points was, you will pay your property taxes to the City of Vancouver based on market value. I understood that system. And that is a system where I can represent myself to Mayor and Council. If I have an issue, or there's a neighborhood issue, I know I can go. I know that I can go before Mayor and Council with an issue. A year after we moved in, the federal government turned over taxing authority to Musqueam. No notice, no consultation, stroke of a pen, and suddenly we're paying our property taxes to an Indigenous band to whom I cannot make representation. You can only do that if you're a band member. We tried to put together a tax advisory group, and they canceled meetings and they never met. You know, it just didn't go anywhere. So, all right, now we're paying taxes there, and then the BC government jumps in. And the BC government says, Musqueam, you do not have to remit any portion of your taxes like the city does. So no 50% to schools, no 8% at the time to the regional district. You get to keep it all. Then the BC government said, we are going to change the BC Assessment Act, and it is that way to this day, where leasehold on Aboriginal land is valued as though it were fee simple or freehold off reserve. So suddenly your property taxes doubled and tripled. Now you still have to pay a mortgage, you still have to pay your living expenses, all of that. Then there was a dispute over an amount we paid each year. This was the first Aboriginal leasehold development in Canada. And the lease was not a prepaid lease, it was a partially prepaid lease. So you paid a lump sum at the beginning, and then you paid so much a year. At the time, it was meant to be mutually beneficial so that the Indigenous would continue to get some fees. But we were in a dispute as to the amount. The leaseholders offered on average $8,800 a year. Musqueam demanded $36,000 a year. It is very difficult to come up with an extra $3,000 a month after tax on top of your mortgage and on top of a tripled property tax just to stay on the property. So we resisted. When we resisted, they sued us. So now we have 75 families, 75 homes, about 200 people. We are defendants in a major lawsuit, which you can't get out of as a defendant. And on the other side is an Indigenous band backed up by both the federal and provincial governments. I'm a lawyer, so what happens? I get involved and I am not just advocating in the community, but I'm also on the legal team. Because we have to fight. We have to fight because they're going to take everything we have. We went to the BC Supreme Court, the BC Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court of Canada. And we won. Woo! Woo! But it took a lot of toll on people. And I'm proud that we won. I'm proud I fought that hard. I'm proud I was part of a neighborhood that fought to retain what they have. But there was emotional toll. There was health toll. There was financial toll. And we had over 30% of our families were seniors or already retired. They can't make up that income. I was working, Brent and I were both in our 30s. You remember those days? We were in our 30s and early 40s, had 4 children. I had a busy law practice. He was an actor and producer. We had busy lives, 4 kids, but our lives were crumbling around us and we had to fight.